Good morning, Melissa.
Good morning, Lloyd. How you doing?
Doing okay this morning. How are you?
I'm good. I have a big cup of coffee beside me, and I am happy about it.
All right. Yep. Got my coffee this morning too. So who's joining us here? Oh, it's only 10:27 on my clock. Thought it was later.
Good morning, Helen.
Good morning, Melissa. Good morning, Lloyd.
Good morning, Helen. Happy Monday.
It is a happy Monday. We're starting our MAT program today, finally. Medicated
Okay.
assisted treatment.
Excellent.
It'll be a slow start, but that's okay.
All right. Good deal.
Something we've been working towards for a while.
Yes. Well, if we can cut down on the number of overdose deaths and overdoses, period, that will be progress.
Yeah, definitely. We have a lot of medics that are excited about being a part of it.
Good. Good morning, Nicole.
Morning.
Hey, Nicole, fancy seeing you again.
I know, right? I feel like I just saw y'all.
Hope you had a good weekend.
Yes, it was beautiful outside, so I tried to spend as much time outside.
I didn't. I should have, but it was nice.
Yes, it was very nice.
We went to see Moulin Rouge on Saturday afternoon.
Did you? How was that?
Oh, it's a great show. It's a
Good.
good show. Yep. It was fun. That theater's had quite a history.
Yes.
Yeah, Thursday was my first time in DPAC. I thought the production was so nice. I was looking at set design and it was just amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, DPAC is great. I go there all the time for the plays and the shows, and yes.
Good morning, Melba.
Good morning to you all.
Melba.
Hope you had a good weekend.
It was good, yes. Hope yours was.
Yes, it certainly was.
They're never long enough these days, are they?
Beautiful weather too.
I know Colin was in another meeting, so I'm not 100% sure if he's going to join right away or not. I just sent a message to Sharita as well.
My supervisor sent me a calendar invite for a meeting at 20 after 10. I know it's kind of short notice, but I was like, sorry, I can't do it. But he's going to do it in my place. That's what he gets for sending me a meeting at the last minute, right?
Yep.
I'm just fortunate that I have a supervisor I can do that with.
Yes, I was about to say, that is definitely a blessing to have that when y'all can kind of take, the different meetings and kind of swap out.
Hey, Sally.
Morning.
Morning, Sally. Morning, Tammy.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hey, Tammy.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Tammy.
Good to see you too.
Good to see you.
Is that Sally on there too? Hi, Sally.
Good morning.
Lori, did I say hi to you yet?
I believe so. Good morning again. Good morning to you, Tammy. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Yeah, it's a good day.
We need longer weekends, y'all. Just saying.
Just saying, yep. 3-day weekends don't come often enough, do they?
I agree.
Seems like I blinked and it was Monday, and I thought, wait a minute, I just felt like I was there.
Yep. All right, I see Colin has come in. Good morning, Colin.
Morning, Colin.
Good morning, apologies. Meeting ran late.
Well, Colin, we'll forgive you this time, but you know.
In fact, the meeting I was in is still going.
Oh, okay. We definitely forgive you then.
And so I can move some stuff. Let me check and see. Sharita might be joining today, but I'll put a agenda here in the chat.
Excuse me. Trying to get my mute button to get in time.
Bless you.
All righty. Do we have quorum of our group, Melissa?
I'm sorry.
Do we
Do we
have
have?
I'm trying to figure out if we have a quorum because we do have things that we need to vote on.
We are, let's see. We do not.
Great. All right, we can get started. Sharita's trying to get in, she said. Let's see. Minute. The big thing we have to determine today is prioritization of state ESG funds and need to think through little white flag planning and our COC funds and whether or not we want to set some prioritization there. And I think all the minutes have been sent out. Is that correct, Melissa?
Yep, we still have to approve the
Minutes.
5 months of minutes that I
Yep.
sent from the last meeting.
Mhm.
I did not get to send the last 3 months, but we do
Okay.
still already have the other, I think it's through February meeting minutes that I sent.
Okay. All right. S- There's, we're waiting.
I don't see her in the waiting
Waiting
room. Uh, does she need the link sent to her again? I can send it to her directly.
Yeah, you can do that. Well, I guess we can get started with things that we don't need to vote on, which would be our unsheltered numbers, and we can talk a little bit about white flag. If we want to do that. I see a new person, Mario. If you want to introduce yourself, Mario, joining.
Hi, my name is Mario Giscombe. I'm a Durham resident and I am chairperson of the Durham's Hispanic Latino Committee.
Ah, wonderful. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right. So as we're pulling things together here, we don't have a quorum yet, so we won't be able to vote on things, but we can walk through. We've got 37 families per last Friday who are stating they're unsheltered, which is a big uptick from last month where we were in the 20s, if I remember correctly, Nicole.
Yes.
And
there was 2 families that called in this weekend, so that is now 39 families, but we did have one opening at UMD this morning that we sent a family to, so then that would bring it down to 39.
71 singles who are currently unsheltered.
Yep, and we had 3 female beds today, so that will bring it down to the 3.
All right, that's good. And 36 families reporting their risk of imminent homelessness within 14 days.
Yep, many of them are being evicted,
Okay,
are staying with family that they have to leave.
got it. And 28 singles in the same boat.
Yes.
Okay. While we're waiting.
And also last month, because remember we talked about how many people come unscheduled at Gilbert location.
Mhm.
For April, we had 3. 2 were after hours when DSS closed, and the other one, he was deaf, so he came to do a in-person intake.
Okay, so 3 people over a month.
Yes.
It's a lot of expense for a building that sits empty 99.9% of the time it's open,
Yes.
except for staff who's sitting there waiting for somebody who might show up.
Yes.
But that's a lot of
And
sitting around.
answering the phones at the same time. So-
Right, right. But those phones could be answered at another
Yes.
location. They don't have to be, we don't need to be spending money renting space if it's not being utilized by the population we thought it would be used by. We can continue that in a different way. Thank you for that update, Nicole. Let's talk a little bit about white flag because it's May and before we know it, it's going to get cold out. And thinking through what we need to do with a white flag shelter and how we might want to structure that or what the needs are or prioritization for that. The current white flag contract has a little bit of money left on it. Not all the funds were spent during this current fiscal or current contract. So we can extend it, which would buy us a little bit of time. Talking to Open Table Ministry, who has that contract, it might get us through the end of the calendar year, Christmas or New Year's timeframe, depending on how cold it gets and how fast it gets cold and how many rooms we stand up. But it is conceivable to be able to stretch it that far. It would obviously be a lot less if we have to feel a lot more cold nights and have to take more people in at a short period of time. It'll last a little bit less. So what are folks' thoughts? Kind of want to hear from you all on the policy and planning side, thoughts about continuing a non-congregate white flag shelter for this cold weather season. Whether is it one, do we still want to do it? Is it needed? If so, who's it needed for, and how do we prioritize? So let's start with is this something that's currently needed now that the COVID pandemic has the COVID emergency has ended? And the reason we started these extra white flag beds was to provide socially distanced white flag during cold weather nights. Of course, our homeless numbers are a lot higher than they were pre-pandemic. So that is something to keep in mind as we start discussion. With that, I will open it up for conversation for anybody who would like.
My opinion on this is I definitely think that the white flag is still needed and the non-congregate, because we definitely still are seeing a lot of elder clients, clients that are medically vulnerable, and families, especially in the winter or cold weather.
I would agree with Nicole on that, with a caveat, because I do believe that we also talked, now, of course, my memory may be failing me, but I believe we also talked about looking at the possibility of some type of a congregate shelter with the numbers continuing to increase, and seeing, what we could do to make sure that we are getting, people in off the street. So, I'm thinking, is there a possibility of really looking at maybe a hybrid situation where we have the I think we talked about this last year, where a lot of, I know in our case, families really wanted to go to the hotel rooms rather than coming to our shelter and be in one of our community rooms. I get that. But I'm thinking if we kind of put some prioritization around who could go to congregate, who would be prioritized to go to the non-congregate, that would help us to direct that a little bit more so this year. Just my thoughts.
So we had talked about in the previous meeting about how some persons would decline a congregate bed because they preferred a non-congregate. And there was a question about, was there some enabling going on? Maybe, maybe not. That I certainly see the value in non-congregate for just the reasons that y'all stated, as long as we can prioritize the ones that go in there and the ones who really need it versus the ones who just want it. Just a shame to say that.
I know.
saying that. It's like, give
I
everybody
feel
a
the
room.
same way, Helen.
But when space is limited, what do you do?
Yeah. And the other piece of it too is how much money are we going to have? You know, that's a big driver. So.
Welcome, Sharita. We're waiting for you and just kind of starting talking about items that didn't need full a full quorum. And we're just having a small discussion right now about white flag planning and thoughts about what it could or should look like for this cold weather season. Just kind of move things around a little bit.
Hello, everybody. I am sorry.
Well, I can't hear you, Sharita.
Oh, no, you can't hear me at all?
No, now we can. Now it's a little bit better. It's just quiet.
I'm sorry, you guys. I'm at home. I'm not in the office today. This is a hospital day for us. So, have you gotten started, Colin?
We just got started. We were just talking about, we skipped down to item number 5, which is about white flag planning. Because the other items, we needed a quorum to be able to vote.
Are we at quorum now with me joining?
Melissa, can you help me count?
We're still one off.
Or what would you say, Melissa?
We're still one off from quorum.
One off. All right, then. Okay. We may have to send something out for folks. We can discuss, we can't vote. We may just have to do an email vote on some items based on discussion.
Okay.
Because we do have some time sensitive things that we do need to make some decisions on, because the state ESG application is coming soon. And we need to make sure that we are clear on how we want to lay things out so that when it gets submitted and goes out, we can communicate clearly to the community. So with that said, do you want to finish white flag discussion?
Yes, go ahead. Let's go ahead
Okay.
and finish that discussion.
All right, so we're talking kind of about what I'm hearing is kind of, there's definitely a need for white flag to continue. There's a need for a non-congregate approach for some folks who are really, really vulnerable, and families, because families are a little bit harder to put in a congregate space effectively. And Tammy raised the possibility of looking at sort of developing a hybrid system where we've got some non-congregate spaces, as well as some congregate and some non-congregate spaces, to meet a variety of needs. As last cold weather season, when some of our congregate options were offered, people were turning them down to remain unsheltered versus in going into one of the shelters. When we had they wanted a hotel room. They didn't want to go indoors to anything other than a hotel room. And we saw that at Families Moving Forward. We'd refer 3 families over on really, really cold nights. And it wasn't a hotel room. It was a shared space, or it was an extra living room. And I think out of the 6 or so families that were referred over the course of the cold weather season, I think 1 came and stayed for 1 night, if I remember correctly. So there is a piece on that.
That really makes me wonder, you all who are doing this work every day, boots on the ground, may know the answer to this, but what are there ways we could improve the congregate setting? Sure, we can't improve it to the degree that it would have the same appeal as the non-congregate, but still, are there things that we could do to make it feel better for families and for individuals? do we need to do any research on that, or do we already have ideas? You know, maybe there are some small things we could do that would improve the uptake, so to speak.
That's a good question. Thoughts?
I really don't know the answer to that. Might be a good. I think we've talked about in the past, taking advantage of some of those opportunities and trying to get some feedback or some information from folks in real time about things like that. I think that's the only way we're gonna get those answers, because I think the folks needing the service really need to share what their concerns are.
Mhm.
I think that's a really good question. And so thinking about kind of what we did here with families, we opened up community rooms to put 2 or 3 families in community rooms. Now, we only had one family, but when I think of the bathroom situation, the bathroom that they had access to did not have shower. They just had, you know, the toilet and the sink. But I'm thinking, what if we had showers available and things like that, or maybe even some type of petitions, you know, that we could petition space off so that it felt like it was their space. I'm thinking maybe something like that could be helpful, um, especially if we're on a budget and we're trying, you know, we can't put everybody in a hotel. So we got to think in terms of what can we afford and what's the biggest impact we can do with that money. And so thinking about it that way, I think that's a really good question that if we could answer that, that could help us with some good decision making around how we set this up.
Well, I think that's a very good point, Tammy, but then I wonder if UMD was having the same issues with their family space, because in their family space, if I'm not mistaken, there are bathrooms in their family space. In their
They
family
have
side of the
four small rooms that have to share a bathroom. And then the bigger rooms have their own bathroom.
And
Say
during,
say it again.
I was saying with the UMD, the 4 smaller family rooms have to share a bathroom. And then the 4 bigger rooms have their own bathroom. Each room has their own bathroom, but I know the 4 smaller family rooms do have to share a bathroom with each other. It's 2 rooms, then share one, and then the other 2 rooms share another.
I didn't realize that.
Urban Ministries also doesn't take families for overflow at White Flag. They only take singles.
I thought in this last White Flag opening, was that when they opened up that space, it wasn't for families, it was single space?
It was
Yeah.
just for singles.
Okay.
Yeah, families moving forward opened up additional space for families.
Yeah, I like Tammy's suggestion of putting partitions into, you know, a community room or something like that to give the families more privacy. I think that is a big challenge. Families need privacy. Everybody needs privacy.
This is Colleen. I was just going to ask, and I don't remember, do they have those low cots like the American Red Cross has when they set up shelter?
Does who have them, Colleen?
For the White Flag, the locations where we set up? Where it's, you said congregate, right? Where people are just open space? Yeah. That's.
I think most of them have been using mats, sort of mats on the floor that are sort of a good 1.5, 2-inch mats. While they're not perfect, some of the challenge comes into storing the bedding during the daytime hours, because that often the shared space, the congregate space people are sleeping in, is used for other activities during the day, and moving and storing cots, there isn't space to store cots easily and effectively. So I don't think we have not used any cots. I think the only ones who have used cots is emergency management when they stand up kind of the weather related shelters that are a community wide thing, but emergency management does that for community wide. It's not, they don't do that as a response to the homeless system.
I wonder if there's some lessons learned that we could get from emergency management that might help for the white flag. Maybe some resources they have that would be cost effective. We could certainly ask Elizabeth.
It's a good idea. The other thing I would be willing to do, I would be willing to reach out to several of our grantors or donors to see if they would be willing to provide the funds that we could maybe rent storage space for dividers or cots when they're, not in use. Because I feel like there's a lot of support around, taking care of families and individuals during the cold months. And I think I could possibly sell that to a couple of grantors or donors, and we could leverage those funds so that we could save the government funds for, the other stuff. I'd be willing to try.
And I know jurisdictions I've worked in the past have used the non-congregate shelters, i.e. hotels, for families, and have used congregate for singles. And it's sort of a way of dividing the resources and setting things up for singles. It's easier to do singles in a congregate space and much more cost effective to do singles in a congregate space than it is to do families and have it all mixed together. The other piece that I've seen work well on the congregate side is getting faith organizations to offer their space if they've got a fellowship hall or other community room that they would be willing to host for, it's at, institution A for this week, and then it might go to another church or synagogue or mosque for another week. And the faith community that's hosting would provide dinner, and then a nonprofit would provide the overnight staffing to ensure safety. And the church could, if they wanted to, add additional support to have somebody there overnight, but it was really more on the homeless service side to provide the oversight and just sort of ensuring everybody's safety. And Sheree, I see your question. I'm not proposing anything. I'm just sharing what I've seen in other jurisdictions of how hotels have been used in other places.
St. Philip's, right, has reached out. They're talking with UMD about some things, and they've reached out wanting to talk to us. So I'm not sure if they may have some availability to support White Flag as well whenever they complete their plans.
Yeah, it actually seems like part of any planning for a sort of new and improved model of emergency shelter / other necessary services, more permanent supportive housing, more everything should include planning for new and improved, white flag shelter and care as well. As our community, hopefully really moves forward on planning around new and better model of shelter.
How much time do we allot for this discussion?
Go ahead, Sharita.
How much time do we allot for this discussion?
Oh, I was just sort of using it to fill a spot. We do have two things that we need to move to, and this is gonna be something that we can come back to.
We're at quorum.
Yeah, we can move on to the items that we need to get voted on, and we can spend some more time on this in our June meeting if you want, or we could set up a kind of a focus group and try and find time for another meeting if you'd like.
How would you guys like to do that? I know that we have talked in the past about having white flag planning, earlier, before we get the white flag. Do we feel like it warrants a separate working group around white flag, or is talking about it in the beginning of our meetings right now sufficient enough for planning for white flag 2023-24?
As long as we don't have anything else that's pressing that we absolutely need to spend a lot of time on, then doing it at the beginning of this meeting should be fine.
Should we add a reminder for upcoming HSAC that those discussions are happening in the beginning of our meeting so that we can get more participation?
Good
Because
idea.
there were people in the past that expressed interest in working on it.
I could even see this being maybe this is crazy. Maybe it's too many people weighing in and too much group thing. But it seems like this might be appropriate just for the full HSAC, or maybe our great staff, Colin and team, hear us in our discussion and come back with a couple of proposals that would include funding. Like something that could come forward to the government decision-making bodies as well. I don't think we should assume that no additional funding would be provided here. I think if City Council and County Commission knew that this is the need, here is the justification for it, this is what it would cost to do a better job with this, funding would come forward. I like to think perhaps it would anyway. And so, I don't know. What do y'all think about that idea? It may be a terrible idea and you're happy. I'm totally open to you saying so.
I mean, I don't know if it's a conversation for the full HSAC in that everybody on the full HSAC, this might not be something that they're interested in. So like trying to really get the people that are very motivated, in my mind, seems like the better solution. And it may open up opportunities for new partnerships and new players at the table who can actually help us. And I think from that, those new fresh ideas that maybe we haven't thought about, and this a great interest in what we do for the winter months, I think it would be a great opportunity to, kind of get some community feedback and support.
Good points, Sharita.
So it's up to you guys. Do we just do a reminder and see what happens at our next meeting? See if we have enough other people interested enough to decide whether we need to pull it out and make it be a group. But for right now, dedicate it to just like probably a part of the early part of our meeting, just to kind of follow up. Tammy, any thoughts? Like I know we talked about some things in this discussion as far as cots and getting support for storage. Like maybe those are things you could kind of like give us a follow-up on your ask to see if, just those kind of things we thought about today, how feasible it looks like it'll be, or anything like that.
I think just kind of thinking out loud, I like the idea of having the city and the county commissioners maybe putting their thoughts together about what white flag would look like being implemented and the dollars that go around that, and maybe submit that or release that in the form of an RFP. And then interested nonprofits or whomever that want to have a part of that could look at what the recommendations are and how the city and the county feel that this would be a good implementation, and then would entertain ideas that come back through the responses to their RFP, and also look at how we could leverage additional dollars to match some of those city and county dollars to have more impact in the white flag. I think that might be a real good opportunity for us to get some creative thinking in around and kind of matching what the city and county have in mind for this area. I know that you do have an RFP that came out last year, but maybe just having a broader scope of reaching out and saying, what are some other things that we need to consider for this year, knowing that the numbers are looking like this, as we are moving into the colder months. Because I got to tell you, I don't think the numbers are going to go down anytime soon. I really don't. I think they're going to increase. And I think we always see a bigger increase around the colder months. So I think it's going to take a lot of different minds and ideas coming together. But I do like the idea that the city and county are really in it with us, because I think that we need that. And that's not to say they haven't been, they have, but it's just, I think that we're looking at some really good ideas that have been brought forward through this committee. And I think that I kind of do like the idea of having some more voices coming in to help us with this. So I don't think going to the full HSAC is totally crazy idea. I like the idea of focus and having voices, and maybe narrowing it down to the decision making, but maybe just getting some real good survey about what we could be doing and what needs to be done, even if it's something like a survey that goes out. Just my thoughts.
Any other comments before we move from this topic?
I did see a question, Sharita, about are we ready for an RFP? The answer to that is no. We have to figure out how much money, what is it that we specifically want people to do, focus on, what's being asked. Now, keep in mind, we have to back this all out, to do an RFP, we've got to get these decisions made, because we would have to launch an RFP in no later than August. It would have to go out in August at the very latest, so it could be responded to by September and scored. And at the same time that's happening, you're going to have a state ESG competition and a COC competition going on at the same time, because essentially the new, whatever we do for white flag is going to have to start, January 1, since I don't know that we're not gonna be able to get this all done and in place for a November 1st start date. Because if we tried to hit a November 1st start date, we essentially would need to get it to city council. If we were doing it on the city side, we would need to go through and get it to the council in end of September at the very latest, which means an RFP would have to go out in July to August and try and make it work. And Commissioner Carter, great question. We do have 2 vacancies on the homeless team. So we are increasing our homeless team. One of those vacancies is filled, and he is in new employee training today. His name is Jeffrey Rawlings. He's coming to us from Balance Estate, and we'll hopefully be able to hit the ground running. He has a lot of ESG rapid rehousing experience, coordinated entry experience. So he'll hit the ground running. He'll be joining us in the office on Wednesday. And there's one more vacancy I'm waiting to hear back on in terms of, I think, some questions back and forth. So hopefully the other position will get filled soon as well. Otherwise, I may just have to go back out. But almost at a full team, thank goodness. It's taken a while to get those filled. So yes, we will need to bring in some RFP resources, but we do need to make some decisions probably at the June meeting. We definitely need to do that. And if we need to think, if we don't get decisions made in June, are we taking July off? Or are we going to meet in July if we have to finish making decisions? So those are things just to keep in mind. So Madam Chair, Sharita, would you like to sort of want to move on to the things that we do need to make some decisions on for ESG prioritization?
Absolutely. Did you guys do the minutes already?
We did not do the minutes yet.
Have people had an opportunity to look at them? I'm just asking. We can skip over it and do it next month. I was just wondering. I haven't read them myself, and I wasn't here. So can we hold off on the minutes until next month?
I'm as staff, we're fine holding off. It's really up to the committee.
Are you guys okay with that? So we can go to ESG funds?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
And
Is
Colleen,
it possible, because I think we're like maybe behind on some of the minutes. Maybe if we had all of the minutes at the next meeting, we could just vote on them all at once. Does that work?
Right.
Okay.
yeah, I think there's a batch Melissa had sent. I think there's like 5 months worth of minutes, and then there's another 3 months that need to come. So we'll just do about 8 months of minutes next
Okay.
month. Okay.
Sounds good. All right. So we will now move to number 4 or number 6. Oh, that's COVID, ESG, COVID funds. No, number 4, prioritization for ESG funds.
Yeah, this is the prioritization of ESG funds.
Mhm.
So a little bit of a refresher here is the state with their ESG funds follow the federal guidelines. The federal guidelines with ESG funds state that at least 40% of your funds must be spent on housing stabilization, which is prevention or rapid rehousing, and no more than 60% of your funds can be spent on emergency services, emergency shelter, or street outreach. And we, as a team, were talking about this year's application because it's about to be announced by the state. They've kind of given us a rough timeline, and we need to get back to them. And when that timeline comes out, we need to be clear on what our priorities are. We as a team were thinking about shifting and wanted to talk to you about shifting the 60-40 split to a 50-50 split. So 50% of the allocation, roughly $85,000, could be spent on rapid rehousing or prevention. Our recommendation is stick in the rapid rehousing category, and 50% could be spent on street outreach or emergency shelter. So we need to decide that question. The next question is, we were talking as a team and thinking through, we're seeing increases in family homelessness. And would we want to try and prioritize these state ESG funds to further prioritize the funds for families who are experiencing literal unsheltered homelessness, i.e. street outreach for unsheltered families over emergency shelter? And on the flip side, a rapid rehousing project that helps homeless families versus helping singles. It was just kind of a way of thinking, what could we do to try and meet the needs of, as we're seeing the homeless families grow in Durham. This was kind of a way that we were trying to think of, how can we target some very specific resources to this group of people we see that's been increasing and really has never been on the radar since until 2021. So wanted to talk those through. So there's 2 pieces. 1, shifting to a 50-50 split, and 2, prioritization for unsheltered families.
And I think, Colin, when you and I talked, there was also an increase in funding for CSBG funds,
Cor-
right?
Correct.
That is it being targeted for emergency shelter?
The CDBG funds that are in the current RFP that's out that agencies are applying for, that historically, there's only been $177,000 that's been available. And that's been available for shelter-based case management. This year, we increased that 177,000 to $300,000, and it's available for housing-focused case management, which could be used in shelter, it could be used in rapid rehousing, or it could be used in permanent supportive housing to assist people. So we do have more supportive services dollars coming through the pipeline.
Which is why you guys would justify the recommendation to us to consider a 50-50 split, because there are additional funds that could make up what could potentially be redirected from emergency shelter, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And granted, the funds aren't exactly equal. So the CDBG funds are only for salaries of case managers.
Mhm.
ESG funds would allow you to pay utility bills, for instance. So
Okay.
it would be, and we're talking about a shift of roughly $17,000 if you're looking at a total shift on that 50%, moving at 10%, reducing the 60 is only about $17,000. It's not a small amount of money, but in the scheme of things, it's not, an astronomical number. But wanted to open it up for discussion because we do need to make decisions on those.
Interestingly enough, it just like hearing you have the conversation, I remember being fresh on HSAC and us having this discussion when our family numbers were really low. And what that felt like for our family serving agencies to see, to see the request for the cut because the numbers were low. So I remember that. And so in light of knowing that we have this growing families problem, and in light of some of the stuff that is being brought to my attention about folks being diverted to our area, I think it makes sense for us to be looking at increasing funding on the family side at this time. I don't know, Ebony, if you have anything that you want to add. I don't know if you looked at any of your past numbers to see the same kind of influx in families on the Durham Public School side as we've been able to catch, just from coordinated entry. I don't know if you have anything to add. Do you have a position on what we should do with the funds? And the only reason I'm asking you because I know you work with families, and I know that it's been challenging at times when we don't have enough resources for you to help the families you're serving. All right. Well, I will entertain other folks' thoughts around this.
Anything that's different than what you already said.
Say it again, Ebony.
So I have a couple of thoughts. The first thought is I really do like and appreciate the fact that that you're willing to look at how to expend funds based on what the data is showing and that we are experiencing in Durham. I really think that's important because it shows how invested that the city and the county is in making sure that the true needs are being met. And this is going to sound really weird coming from somebody who has an emergency shelter. My concern is honestly about those families that are unsheltered on the street. I just think we got to get them off the street. And if it means more money going toward rapid rehousing and getting supportive services out to people that are on the street, I think we got to get it to them and get them get some support for them as well. I know that when we have families here that we place into rapid rehousing or more permanent housing, we have a program where we stay with the families for a year. But the people on the street, the families on the street, don't have that right now. And they need that too. And so I feel like if we're looking at maybe doing a split in this prioritization, that we could actually reach more families and provide some services to them to keep them housed. And then we know from the data that we've gathered that anytime that you can get to the kids as early as possible and get them the resources that they need, that's an opportunity to break this cycle of homelessness and of poverty. So anything that can help with that, I'm all for it. That's just my thoughts from looking at what I've seen over the past 17 months since I've been at Families Moving Forward. But my concern, of course, I'm concerned with the families you have here, but my big concern is really for those families that are still out there unsheltered on the street. Nicole gets the calls. We're getting so many calls, and they literally break my heart, because I just want to bring them all in, and I can't, but we can push them through rapid rehousing as much as possible. And the biggest thing that limits us is landlords, vouchers, all the things that we already know, and funds. So I'm all for it.
Thank you, Tammy. Any other thoughts?
What I would add to that is that also that increase from the rapid rehousing can help you turn over space as well. So I don't think it's a lose-lose situation to increase funding on that side. I think it can help from the kind of recycling of space at Families Moving Forward, as well as helping some people who maybe don't get the opportunity to come to Families Moving Forward to get diverted or get have the opportunity to go directly into a house situation. I'm sorry, y'all, my baby's talking. So does it sound like this is like, are we considering the 50-50 split and then and the special consideration for prioritizing rapid rehousing funds for families?
That's what the community, that's what the CDD team is proposing, is that we split it 50-50, prioritize rapid rehousing funds for families, and then on the emergency shelter street outreach side, priority would be given to a street outreach program focused on helping unsheltered families versus money going to an emergency shelter. That's what we were thinking. And I know it's, and Tammy, I appreciate your openness and your transparency, because you are a shelter provider who would obviously benefit from the funds going to emergency shelter. But I appreciate your stepping up and saying, hey, I'm willing to shoot myself in the foot for the better good of the community. So this is kind of where we were thinking as an agency of how do we better allocate our resources, and how do we really try and hone in, because right now our pools of funds are just, here's a bunch of money. And then every week I'm in meetings when there's openings trying to figure out who gets a slot in rapid rehousing. And we don't have like, oh, here's some dedicated money for families. Here's some dedicated money. So it's kind of a, we have way more singles in the system, and the singles in the system who are chronically ill are going to outscore families every single time on issues. So we really need to get to the point where we kind of proportionally allocate resources. And that's what we've been doing in the last few referrals for rapid rehousing is kind of saying, we roughly have a 75% of the population experiencing homelessness are singles, 25% are roughly families. So when those openings become available, it's okay, if I've got 10 openings, let's refer, 3 or 4 families, and let's refer 6 or 7 singles into those 10 openings. So we're kind of trying to proportionately allocate the resources. And this was a way of trying to start a process of us thinking through how do we use our money and how could we proportionately allocate this. And by the state doing these funds, it would be a relatively easy, clean line to draw and say, all right, here's some funds that are specifically targeted to the families. And then we can start having conversations about the rest of the money and how do we want to allocate those over time.
Colin, do you feel like our street outreach projects are going to be able to successful in just rapidly rehousing families directly from the street? You think will it cover hotel stays, or is this permanent housing solutions?
This is permanent housing solutions. I think, could an organization get really creative and set up a street outreach and emergency shelter project? Because the emergency shelter project would allow a short-term hotel stay to be paid for. But if you're talking $85,000, by the time you factor staff and street outreach and paying for hotels, it's not going to go very far. The thought was if we had street outreach working with families, we might be able to divert them. If we had more, targeted rapid rehousing money, we might be able to move families out of shelter a little bit faster. So for the unsheltered families, they might have a shorter wait time to get into a shelter, or staff who is working with them while they're unsheltered and really honing in on trying to say, all right, what's a diversion plan? Can we get you back with friends or family? Can we refer you to rapid rehousing? Can we help you increase your income? Can we help you get the documents you need? Those types of things.
And so that's what I thought the proposal was, but it sounds like Tammy is suggesting a kind of something different in her suggestion is like really like serving people who are on the street with the funds to get them directly housed. And my concern about being that specific with the funds is that we don't have the inventory to be able to do that. And some of our rapid rehousing, what we're going through right now is that a lot of folks got tagged into rapid rehousing resources, but they were not ready for rapid rehousing resources. They needed longer subsidies. So in my mind, prioritizing it for rapid rehousing for families looks like being able to turn over the spaces that we have in our emergency family shelter faster so that folks are not on the street as longer. That's the thought that's in my head. And I don't know if what you guys are proposing is what I'm thinking or what Tammy's thinking.
So yeah, I get it. So Sharita, we're kind of doing both. So what we're doing, we have some rapid rehousing funds that are from the city. We also have some rapid rehousing funds that are from a foundation. So we're using the rapid rehousing funds from the city to pull from the by name list. So that means these may be families on the street, but they also may be families that are already in our shelter. It really just depends on where they're, when they're coming off the list and how we can get them into rapid rehousing. Now, the piece with the foundation that we have, those funds are being used specifically to house people that are in our shelter. So we're using those because the city strings attached are we need to be able to go to the by name list, but the foundation is saying We don't care how you use these funds. We just want to help you get people into housing. So we're using those funds to move people out of our shelter into rapid rehousing as quickly as possible. And so what we've done at Families Moving Forward is we have 2 tracks when families come in. There's a fast track and there's a track of people that we know are going to take longer, that are going to need to be here longer, and that are going to need more services. The fast track families that are coming in that maybe have an income and maybe have landlord, no evictions or anything on their record, we're moving them out as quickly as we can with our rapid rehousing dollars so we can let more people come in, but we're still taking care of getting these people that we know are going to take longer into rapid rehousing or more permanent housing. It's just going to take longer because we've got to help them do things like clean up their landlord record or find a job or, financial planning. So we're kind of doing both. It just depends on how we're charging the bucket, if that makes any sense at all.
It absolutely does.
And Sharita, your statement, we need PSH for families. We have referred a few families to PSH. The numbers of families who qualify is very small. Some of that is either families don't have the chronicity or they are lacking documentation because, they don't want to be seen or labeled or, all the millions of reasons that we have people in the system who don't want to get a documentation, even though it might help them secure housing. So we are prioritizing, and I will share, we have been, to Sharita's point, we've been looking at rapid rehousing and trying to better match rapid rehousing for people who are appropriate for rapid rehousing, i.e. households, singles, families, whatever it is, who really only need a short to medium term financial assistance, have some sort of a plan to be able to sustain themselves. We have gotten away from everybody gets rapidly rehoused because we are running into this cliff now of people who referred to rapid rehousing 2 years ago. They're now being evicted because they weren't able to actualize a housing plan. So we have made some course corrections and trying to better tailor the housing intervention. The other reason we also kind of want to make sure we bring more money into the rapid rehousing side is and we'll share this in a debriefing later, is we lost points on our COC application because our number of rapid rehousing beds decreased substantially because of the decisions and the way we were rapidly rehousing for the last 2 years. We, had all these people rapidly rehoused and they never came off that subsidy. So people who came in new was about half as many people as had been in previous years. So we are struggling to make this all work.
I understand what you're saying, and I just want to respond to this statement that Lloyd put in here about a lot of families not having a family member with a disability. You will be amazed how many families do. I think that the problem with the term disability is that everybody feels like disability means a person is just completely unable to function. And disability has an actual wide range of things. I'm a person who suffers from anxiety. I have a disabling condition. It doesn't look like it. I function. I go go places every day and do things. I think that we just haven't done a good job ourselves with understanding what that term means, as well as our clients, because everybody thinks the absolute worst when you think about the word disability. And so I think, kind of making sure that we have those conversations with our clients that normalize challenges that we all have. People have physical impairments. I have asthma. I can consider that something that debilitates me. If I go outside and run a little bit too much, I might get sick, when the weather changes, I get a cold, I'm really at risk. Those things are dangerous for me. So I feel like just the way that we talk about disabling conditions, I think it hinders us from being able to kind of meet that mark a lot of times, and that we have a lot of people who have something that impacts them in some way from a emotional or physical standpoint, even though they're functioning, that actually qualifies as a disabling condition.
Mhm. I think you're right, Sharia. We do need to do a better job of educating our, not just ourselves, but the clientele as well, to sort of destigmatize disability. All right, we do need to take a vote on this. Are you all ready, Madam Chair? Do you want to take a vote on this now, or you think we
took
need
the
more
words right
discussion?
out of my mouth? It sounds like we need to make a decision, even though we haven't heard from all of the voices. Are folks ready to vote on this item? I will entertain a motion. If anybody is so courageous.
I'll make a motion that let me think about what I'm saying, that we will shift from the 40-60 split to the 50-50 split, where 50% rapid rehousing or prevention and 50% street outreach emergency shelter, with the prioritization of families in the street outreach. I think that's what we were talking about, right?
And a prioritization of rapid rehousing over prevention.
Yes.
I have a motion on the floor. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
That is Helen Tripp.
Me.
Everybody ready? All those in favor, please put your vote in the chat. Yes, no, or abstain if you need to.
All right, has everybody voted? Who wishes to vote? Looks like the motion carries.
Everybody didn't vote.
It looks like Helen, Sharita, Tammy, Heidi, Colleen. She may have had a slip boy.
Colleen voted. She's on there as a yes.
Oh, I don't see it. Oh, it hadn't popped up on my screen yet.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Yeah, Sharita are on the slow side. All right, there it is.
All right, motion carries.
All right.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you all. And then
what's the last thing?
The last one, Lloyd, do we need to make a decision today on COC bonus funds?
We don't need to make a decision today, but we should probably at least prep for a decision in June.
Okay.
We haven't.
All right. So this is just sort of our annual COC NOFO. We're expecting to be released sometime in the near future. HUD has thrown out a couple dates to us, and we're holding our breaths to see if it actually works. But part of it is to talk about COC bonus projects, whether we go for encourage people to apply for a domestic violence rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing with dedicated plus. So that's the discussion that we'll need to have and sort of make recommendations and votes on at our next meeting. Is there anything I'm missing on that, Lloyd? Or is that
the domestic violence bonus, which HUD has indicated they're going to have again, is not available for permanent supportive housing or DV providers, only for rapid rehousing and joint transitional housing, rapid rehousing projects. But the COC bonus, actually HUD has expanded the availability of those funds to be used for any eligible COC funded activity, which includes permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, HMIS implementation, as well as coordinated entry, supported services for coordinated entry support.
Any questions on that? We'll punt it and give you more information in June for that decision. The last item that I'm showing, Madam Chair, is just an
So
update.
ESG COVID.
Yeah, ESG COVID. We are in the process as the city cleaning up policies and procedures. One of the items that we had to do is, remember all those written standards, and we had a written standard and we incorporated the ESG CV into our regular written standards. Well, what we're doing now is pulling the ESG CV out of those written standards. So it's a standalone document. We've made some corrections. We've worked with our TA providers to find kind of what they've considered a good example for us, and have worked on modifying it. We're finishing final modifications to it to reflect Durham. It is a straightforward HUD required document that is sort of, here's what you're allowed to do, here's how often it needs to be done. So we're going to recommend that we probably just go ahead and approve it once it gets sent out. We'll may be able to do it by an email vote, but we can also, that's the way we'd set it up, is to be able to approve kind of those standard things that there isn't a whole lot of dialogue on, because it's, here's the HUD rules and just sort of making it simple. But we'll send it out and we can either vote to approve at the June meeting, or do an email vote beforehand, if you all would like. And we are also in the process of updating forms to standardize forms so that they'll be ready for those. But those forms aren't necessarily things that need to be approved by policy and planning. We'll share them with you so you can sort of see what they are, but they're basically forms to ensure that we stay in compliance with the HUD rules, and that those forms across the spectrum will collect the required information at each step of the way to sort of standardize our various programs.
Colin, is it possible that we could do it at the June meeting? Because I think that way we can have a little discussion to make sure we understand what we're voting for.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Absolutely. So we will work on getting that out in the next week or two. So you'll have at least a week or two to look at it. All right.
Well, it sounds like we have exhausted everything on our agenda for today. Beyond our minutes, which will come up for review in our next meeting. I will entertain, if there's no additional questions, or a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I'll move to adjourn.
All right.
I'll second.
Right. Heidi, Helen and Tammy, you guys are on it today.
We got a lot of coffee. Helen, where's that coffee?
We were waiting for each other to see who was going to go first.
Well, I will see you guys on next month. Take
See you
care.
next time.
Good.
Guys,
Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Sorry.